Married to a Shrink is an association with Love Lines LLC. Love Lines is a boutique relationship development company dedicated to guiding you towards meaningful connections. Love Lines offers expert dating coaching, personalized matchmaking by therapists trained in couples dynamics, and enriching online self-paced relationship courses. Our services are designed to empower you on your journey to building fulfilling romantic relationships that serve and honor you. To learn more, visit lovelinesatx.com. And now, let's get down and dirty with all things relationships. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Married to a Shrink. I am Allie Johnson Calderon, LCSW, the shrink portion of Married to a Shrink podcast. I am also the founder and owner of Love Lines, the dating coaching and matchmaking service that is completed and done by licensed therapists. And we also have courses and other goodies on there. And so this podcast is in association with that. And we bring on guests. I shouldn't say we're going to bring on guests, because right now it has been conversations between my husband and I about all things relationships and kind of coming at it from a perspective of therapist lens versus just everyday guy in a relationship. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael to kind of introduce himself.
Hey y'all, Michael here. I'm the lucky guy that gets to call himself Allie's partner. For those visually here today with us, first time I'm not wearing my cowboy hat, so I'm feeling a little naked up top without my hat. But it's all good. Looking forward to another conversation with Allie here.
Yeah, as we kind of move into intimacy and connection. Because last week we talked about sex. Yeah, we talked about sex for those who missed that. And so what I kind of alluded to, or I didn't allude to, I think I directly said during our episode on sex, that sex is a component of intimacy, but it is not what intimacy is as an entire concept, right? And where intimacy is the feeling of connection and trust that you have with your partner, where you feel seen, where you feel heard, where you really feel accepted, right? Because that's really what intimacy is a feeling of deep acceptance from another person. And a lot of times with that acceptance can play in sex, right? Because for a lot of folks, and I would say for most folks, that the enjoyment and really pleasure that can come from sex really can come from the intimacy component, really feeling connected to your partner during those acts of love. And so with that, how would you define, kind of putting sex aside, how would you define intimacy within our marriage?
I think it's just a very close connection with you, whether it be physical and emotional. It's just feeling that comfort, that deep level of comfort that I'm with who I want to be with, and I feel loved, I feel safe. That's for me what I feel with our intimacy. And
so taking aside sex, because we kind of covered how that makes you feel connected, what other ways do you feel that intimacy is present? When do you feel most connected with me as a partner?
Outside of sex?
Outside of sex, yeah.
Just cozying up on a couch, your head on my shoulder, your head on my thigh, just watching a movie, holding you and embracing you, a tight hug, a kiss on the lips. It's your kind actions, just something thoughtful that you've done. Just a sense of feeling loved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting, and this is not uncommon for a male, is yours is physical dominant, right? Nothing you really mentioned there was in regards to emotions. Yes, we can take the fact that there's action behind a thoughtful gesture, and that makes you feel, intimacy and connection. But for you, and I would challenge for research supports this as well, like the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Did I say that one right? Kind of supports these notions. It's an old book, but some of the research that's come out since is still kind of along those lines, where a lot of times for the genetic makeup of males versus females, that there is more of a physical component for that connection. I just wanted to kind of call out that for you, without any setup, you automatically went towards actions that are physical based, right?
I did, and I've not read that book, but I think most people in our demographic at least have heard of it.
Yeah.
This is unscripted, y'all. So, I guess it tends to be for me like the most males in a relationship. It's a little bit more physical, but I certainly do feel a connection when we are sharing something emotional. As we've talked about on prior podcasts, I sometimes have a tendency of having trouble expressing my emotions and my feelings. So I think that's probably why I left it out.
And I would also kind of add into that I know a lot of times after we have had a very emotional situation that we've had to navigate, a lot of times that's where you really want to have sex.
I think for me it's like maybe a reassurance isn't the right word, but it's like I feel like we're disconnected. I want to reconnect.
But especially if we've had, do you know what I mean? Like if you have helped me through something and I've been very emotional about something and I've had a really hard time navigating a certain situation and I've relied on you to kind of help me through that. And then we connect on that. And then I feel like that is when sex for you doesn't feel as scripted or as scheduled or anything like that. I feel like it's pretty consistent where after you've kind of helped or guided me through something, you get turned on through that.
I think it's an interesting observation. It's a true statement that when you are vulnerable emotionally, oftentimes it does turn me on because I do feel that connection, but it's you expressing, it's you creating, it's you creating that emotional intimacy. It's not, me expressing myself emotionally.
No, because you expressing yourself emotionally is a little bit of a challenge, right, honey? So, and I think that's why for me, where I feel most connected and where I feel like there have been challenges in, I would say, our intimacy are when I need to connect via emotions and conversation, because that's how I connect, is through, and it's not uncommon for that to be a gendered stereotype where women have to connect through emotions. But I think for me as an empath and also a therapist, I crave a depth to conversations that I don't think are always the norm within everyday lingo. Maybe they are. You don't think so?
I'm shaking my head no for the listeners out there.
Yeah.
No. Allie likes depth. A lot of depth. More than average, I would absolutely say.
I do like depth. And so I know for me, that is where I feel most connected. However, where I feel like there can be a discrepancy is a number of things. One, I recognize that we can't always go there, right? You don't always have the bandwidth, or your ADHD may be flaring, or you're distracted with work, or there's something happening there where you're unable to, one, go there. Two, if you are able to go there, you're not able to stay there for as long as I really need you to stay there so that I can continue down my rabbit holes of very deep. I mean, I get philosophical and I get very like.
You want to be understood, I think, is the base of it. You want to feel known and understood. And when you go down your multiple levels, I think it's just you want to you just want to make yourself known. Like, this is how my mind is working. This is what I'm thinking. Can you get on my level here? Yes.
And I think that's where there can be disconnection, right? Because for you, it's simpler to create a connection, right? I have to hold your hand, or I have to, come in for a snuggle or kiss goodbye, like, right? Or I have to listen to you talk about things that are real easy to listen to, right? Like they're not as complex because of your expression. Whereas for you, in order for you to really connect with me, I feel like the ask is much greater. Does this make sense?
It makes total sense.
And so I feel like that's where it can really, I'm empathetic to that. And I'm like, but at the same time, I try to show myself love and self-care in terms of like, yeah, but that's who I am. And like, that's what you signed up for. You said you were going to partner with me and marry me, right? And so there's this, sometimes there's this paradoxical nature to how I operate, where I've got one alley on my shoulder being like, you're asking too much. Like, you don't need to go this deep. You don't need to be heard. You don't need to be seen in this. Like, he's tired. He doesn't have the bandwidth right now. Like, let's cut it off, right? And then the other alley on my shoulder is like, no, but this is like, I want to go here. And I'm not saying like it's like this personal deep stuff, like it's a wounding type thing, but just these long philosophical, like time-consuming conversations that I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth and say they become wary for you, but I do think that because of your ADHD, your attention span towards them can disrupt my connection.
It can dwindle. So I really am working towards being able to stay present the entire time, because I really want you to feel known and understood. I know how important that is, not to you, but just to me as well. Like I want that for us. So, I don't think I fall asleep during these conversations.
Only a couple times. No, it's not enough every time occurrence.
So I enjoy them, but it does take a fair amount on my side of work subconsciously to stay present and to stay be in a state of active listening.
Thanks for listening to Married to a Shrink, y'all. We're going to take a quick break. In the meantime, if you want to like or subscribe Married to a Shrink for more content and relationship advice, we would love for you to do so. We are so glad you are here, and we are so glad to see you investing in your relationships. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, no, it's fair, and so it is, and I recognize that. And so that's why I think I limit some, because to be clear, these are not egocentric narratives like about I want to talk about me. Like, I like to talk about things that can't be solved in the world. So it's just like things that I think people will find, would find it, super unenjoyable, because I like to talk about things like the famine in Sudan and the wars and and I like to talk a lot about what is happening in the world and humanity efforts and just crises, which, isn't exactly lighthearted, everyday, enjoyable chitty chat.
It is not lighthearted at all. Oftentimes you'll start to get teary-eyed and I don't see my purpose here. Like, how can I help? I feel hopeless. And it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's like, sometimes I don't know how to respond to it.
You can't. Like, how do you respond? Because you can't solve it. I can't solve it. But the fact that I want to talk about it is just that enough for me. But I think I can recognize that there's times you're like, really don't want to talk about XYZ.
I don't want you to feel that way. Whenever you want to have these talks, let's have one of these talks. And I will sit up if we're in the bedroom. I will sit up to make sure I don't fall asleep. So
well, we don't have a TV in our bedroom, which
I think is very healthy.
Super helps so many of these things because there's no distractions. Like the only,
there's a little 3.5-inch distraction that I'm working to keep away.
Oh,
my phone.
I knew that's where you were going, but the way that was phrased, I was like, that could go in a number of different directions. Yeah, like what? Yeah. Oh, your phone. Which you're the one who alluded to this, and it was going to come in my questions.
It is an intimacy.
Ask what you think is the biggest source from the outside that influences our connection and intimacy. And it is?
My phone.
Your phone.
It's my phone. Drum roll. Yeah, I have a slight addiction to that thing.
Are we really going to use the word slut? I know you don't like to call it out.
It is my escape. It is my escape when it's been a rough day and I could tell you all the headlines on Yahoo at any given moment because I'm on there.
Who looks like
yeah, I look at Yahoo, I'll look at MSN, I'll look at CNN. I get my news from all these different things so I can triangulate my own opinion. I scroll a whole bunch on Craigslist. I don't do social media. I know it was a struggle here with our move. We needed a whole bunch of furniture and you hated that I started to utilize your Facebook for Marketplace so we can source some furniture. So I can see why I got off Facebook a long time ago because it's just, it's tough.
Yes. Your phone is by far the biggest disconnect for our intimacy and connection because I would say that you don't just use it when you had a hard day. It is your escape for everything. It is your escape for boredom. I don't feel like you know how to just be bored. I feel like it's your escape when you're uncomfortable or it's truly, I could go down a list of what you use it for. So yes, we may not have a TV in our bedroom, which helps, but it is really hard for you to stay present. And I feel like some of it is your ADHD. And so I give you grace for that. But where I have stopped giving grace is the cell phone situation. Because it gets pulled out everywhere all the time. And we have had to put so many boundaries on it. Mm-hmm. And even then, I come to a place where I get hurt by it. And then my hurt turns to anger. Because when I am used to us being in the middle of a conversation that has meaning and importance for me, and you walking away and because you get distracted and then coming back to resume, but not communicating that you're walking away because you're distracted. Like we'll get to an episode on personality acceptance, and those are things I've accepted about you, right? That I can sometimes be mid-sentence and you will leave the room and I'm like, it's okay. He'll be back in about 60 seconds. And you come back, but you don't say anything. You just peace out. And do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you mean. Have I not gotten better? Because I feel like I at least now I recognize it and I'll be like, hold that thought 1 second.
I'd say we're about we're about 50-50 with the hold the thought 1 second, which
Okay.
again, to your point, is an improvement. But all that to say is like, I've accepted that. Like that's part of that's part of who you are, right? And like, that is part of any dynamic is personality acceptance. There comes a point where you just have to accept aspects of the personality of your partner and be like, can I deal with this? If I can't, then maybe we need to look at how we exit a partnership. But if like, right, like it's part of who you are. I've accepted that. But what I won't ever accept is the darn cell phone coming in on like moments of connection. And that's where I still get very frustrated.
You express it.
Because I don't know what else to do besides be like, hey, my love, can we please put it up? Or cell phone needs to go up. Like, because I don't even think at this point you notice that you do it.
My mind seems like it's always racing. And it's like, I feel like sometimes pulling it out, like I'm able to at least focus some energy on that.
But why can't you focus the energy on the person talking?
Well, no, this isn't when we're in conversation. This is when we're...
Michael Calderon, it so is. It's when we're in conversation. It's when we're at dinner with friends and family.
It's when I'm fact-checking. It's when I'm fact-checking something from if it's ever pulled out during a conversation, it's to fact-check something.
But why do you need to fact-check it in the middle of a conversation?
Because we were just talking about it, and I need to be able to say...
But you need to be able to say what?
Well, we tend to...
I think my point is that I would just like to remind that we both know how each other needs to connect and how our intimacy for each other, what we need to be able to feel like our relationship has intimacy. And you know it's conversationally for me. So I would challenge the notion that if your strategy is to fact check something in the middle of an in-depth conversation with me so that you can further contribute to the conversation, you are taking away from you're disconnecting.
It's counterproductive.
That's the word I was looking for. It's counterproductive.
I can see that. I can see that now when you point it from that point of view.
Because like for me, it's less about the facts in that, and it's more about the conversation and the ideas around it. Because I'm a high creative, and I really like to. I love to brainstorm and just like be like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And when you pull out your phone, I think at this point, it is like a major trigger for me. Major trigger.
I would agree. Because I think there's times where I've pulled it out where it would have been, in most people's eyes, a reasonable time to pull it out. And you automatically, that trigger's been set. And it's like, whoa, hold on here.
Oh, yeah. I am not appropriately reactive to your phone being pulled out at this point.
Yeah.
During a conversation.
I would agree.
Like, it has swung. Well, I just don't have patience for it anymore.
You have patience in generally most aspects. That is not one of them.
No, because I used to. And I feel like for me, it is a sign for how I take it is I no longer want to listen to you, and I'm no longer going to respect what you're needing in this partnership to connect with me. So I take it as a major sign of disrespect to me and to our relationship.
I'm sorry, love.
No, I know you are. And you say this, and I appreciate and I accept your apology.
I want to get better with it. I want to put it up. We've talked about putting it in a basket when we get home.
We got the basket.
I got the basket.
We have said when you get home, you don't get to be back on it until, like, I'm doing my, like, turn down routine. Mm-hmm. Right? But yet...
Do we still have... We already packed the basket.
Well, I think we have already packed the basket.
Well, we can put it
regardless, I don't think you have to literally have the basket in order to initiate this.
No, it's the metamorphical basket.
Yeah, because that's what we've talked about. We have talked about, yes, when you get home, the phone goes in the basket. When you get home, it's turned off until, I'm doing my turn down routine, and then you can peruse on it for that 20 minutes and sometimes 40 minutes because of all the gosh darn night routines that our children have. So you could probably get it a full hour at sometimes, depending on how the kids' day was, right? And so, and then when it's time, when I am done parenting and I am done with my nightly routine, then you can put it back. But it's that knee-jerk reaction for you to just disconnect from me to connect on a device. And that angers me, yes, but more so it hurts my feelings so much. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Because you're just nodding. I'm looking at me right now. What's going through your head?
I mean, I know we've had this conversation before, and I don't know, it's sinking in differently this time.
Oh, really? What about it? Because it's in a public forum.
Maybe the light shining on me.
The light's shining.
But no, truthfully, it's having a different impact.
Okay, well, that was not my intention, but I'm encouraged to hear that it is, right? Because I think that is the biggest outside force to our connection and our intimacy. Looking to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships? Wherever you are, Lovelines has you covered. Our online self-paced courses designed by licensed couples therapists are available to anyone, no matter your location. These courses delve into the essentials of creating and maintaining healthy relationships. Whether you're single, dating, or in a committed relationship, our expertly crafted content will equip you with the tools and insights you need to foster connections that truly serve you. With this commitment in mind, we pledge to donate 5% of every course sold to support individuals who have faced the trauma of unhealthy relationships. A portion of every purchase will go to the Safe Alliance, empowering survivors on their journey to healing and rebuilding their lives. Ready to start your journey towards better relationship? Visit lovelinesatx.com to explore our courses and to take the first step toward building the love you deserve on your own schedule. Cheers, y'all. I would say the other force, which is very common for people who are parents, but children, it can be very challenging for us to maintain a conversation when our children are up.
I completely agree there. We love our children, but they can we can be mid-conversation.
We can be mid-sentence.
And one of our daughters has a thought that she just needs to bring up at that moment. And I know we started the raising of the hand or the spoon at the dinner table. We had the speaking spoon.
But then that started getting distracted.
They have their hand up in the middle of dinner, and it's like, we're talking, we see your hand, but like, let us go and then we'll get to you. It can be distracting.
And then they'll start fighting over who gets to speak first, right? Well, no, my hand was up first. No, so then it's just like, okay, like, so what were we even talking about? And so I think that's where we've had to start initiating, where we don't have I wouldn't say serious. We sure as heck don't have any serious conversations at the dinner table, but also we don't do any planning logistics. Like we have dinner together as a family every night without fail. And when we do, we have decided as a couple that we no longer hold conversation between the two of us. I think we both recognize that is not the time for us as a couple. that is time for us as a family.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think we ever sat down or made that determination, but that's definitely
organically, I think
that's how that's played out.
Yeah.
We'll ask the girls about their day. Our foster kiddos will ask about their day. But yeah, we don't have conversations between the two of us outside of our involvement in these overarching conversations.
And when we do need to have a conversation because it's time pressing, then what we always have to prep our children. And we're very religious about that in terms of like, so during dinner, we'll have family conversation, but as soon as your plate is in the dishwasher, like I'll say, Dad and I have to have a conversation. We cannot be interrupted unless it's an emergency. Mm-hmm. And we set everyone up with their homework or their book or their activity or whatever it is that they're doing, and we put the boundaries around that. Mm-hmm. Because there's times that, yes, like the philosophical, like what I feel like are fun conversations, because no one else thinks are fun, but I think are fun. Those happen like weekends and late night if there's bandwidth. But when we are tired, we both work full time, raising a family. There are times we have to have conversations before 9 p.m. because for our sanity, for our abilities, right? And so we've had to really put in some guidelines around with our children to say this is conversation time between the parents, and that y'all need to be doing your own activities right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so what else do you think would you add to how parenting can kind of disconnect?
I think that's the biggest thing from a conversational standpoint. Their bedroom is next door, so from a sex component, we have to make sure that they're asleep and the doors
shut
locked.
Doors and lock doors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just children suck a lot of energy, and a lot of times there's no energy left.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why, that brings up a good point. I think that's why it's easier to meet your needs than my needs. Because my connective needs can also be a big suck. And sometimes I don't even have the bandwidth for them. Right?
No,
I don't have the bandwidth to have one of those conversations that I enjoy to have that I know will connect us, because I'm tapped.
You're spent. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There's times I feel like I am ready. I can handle a conversation. But to your point, you're spent. It was a tough night with one of the kiddos, or somebody had their attitude, or
these preteens and teens is for the birds.
But you don't have the ability to go to the depth that you want to.
That's really going to make me feel connected and seen, 100%. And then, and again, that's not your fault. It's not like you're pulling out your phone or anything like that. It's just that I don't have the bandwidth. And so it can be easier. I think that's why it sometimes can feel that your connectivity is there.
Or simple.
When mine isn't, because it is simpler. Right? Because when we're both tapped, I can still hold your hand. I can still kiss, and I can still be physically close to you. But when we're tapped, or when I'm tapped, I can't have the conversations I need to be able to feel
connected.
The connection. I mean, I would say that phone and parenting are the biggest ones that can kind of that we have to navigate through to stay connected. I would not say they're we really have to be conscientious of it and navigate through it. Anything else that you think
those are, I think, the only two that I can think of. I think we're in a fortunate position that I don't bring my work home.
I don't either. Well,
I mean, you work from home.
But yeah.
So I think we're fortunate in that sense. I think that work does play a barrier for a lot of couples. So
yeah. We don't bring that home. We also are thoughtful about not bringing other relationship stressors like friendships and family dynamics that we're having a hard time with. We don't let that influence our connection. Like if one of us has had a challenging conversation with a parent or one of our parents or family members or a friend or something like that, or we're hurt by something of that, we do a good job, I feel like, of making sure that stressor dynamic doesn't come between our connection. Right? Like we don't lump it in.
No, I can't think of any single instance where that's played a role.
Yeah, but I know for a lot of couples, what I've seen in sessions with folks is they'll be like, yeah, you were just like my dad, and this is how you're doing X, Y, and Z, and like this is why. And there are, but to be fair though, we are both lucky in terms of our families of origin did not create childhoods or experiences for us that makes it challenging for you and I to be connected. We don't have trauma from our parents, right? And for a lot of couples whose parents caused them trauma, it's not uncommon for things that they have seen or that they're currently experiencing with their families of origin to be triggered within their partnership. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But we are lucky that we have not, both of our families are fantastic, and we haven't had, we're not bringing that into our relationship. And so my challenge for couples who do have that as part of their dynamic, make sure you seek couples therapy to help navigate that, because that is a very real dynamic of trauma from your family of origin coming in and creating a strain on your connectivity and your intimacy. And that it's really hard to navigate on your own, right? Because you're constantly triggered.
Right.
If your partner is doing something, you're constantly going to be triggered. And so I think we are lucky in terms of like our two biggest ones is parenting, which we have figured out how to set boundaries around and navigate, and strategies for us on maintaining our intimacy and connectivity while we're parenting is, yes, when we're having sex, kids are asleep or not home, doors are shut and locked, right? So there's always a separation there. If we are needing to have conversation that's before bedtime, we make sure to tell the children that we need this time, and we allow them to have the family time and the time to have their conversation before we move into ours. And then I think, what else have we done to kind of really make sure we stay connected while we're parenting? We don't triangulate. We're really good about that. We don't say go ask your dad or go ask your mom.
No, we have a united front. We don't throw the other under the bus.
Yeah.
Like if the girls were to ask you something and not like the response, and they come to me, I'm gonna not change. The rule is the rule, or vice versa. You don't.
Well, because how we communicate it is like, so say one of our our children, I'm just using universal because we have our girls, but then we also have other kiddos who come in our home. Like, if they came and like, Dad told me to ask you XYZ, I will go directly to you and be like, Michael, did you tell them to ask this? This is where I am on it. Agree or disagree? And you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Same. Like, we do it in front of them.
Right.
We make sure there's not any...
Not any games being played,
or
manipulating
like
the situation.
100%. Or like, oh, just go ask your mom. You don't ever say... And I never say, just go ask your dad. What I will say is, my answer is yes. Your dad may have a different opinion. Confirm with him. But my answer is yes. And then what they'll do is they'll go to you and be like, Mom said yes. Do you agree or not? Right? Like, that's how we've made sure that we stay connected, because kids want what they want, and they're not malicious. They're just going to try to, if they got to know, they're going to try to get a yes from someone. Right?
What was the clinical term? The triangulation?
Triangulation. It's where you pit against each other, and it creates where a triangle where one person is saying something different to the other person is saying something different, and then it or splitting is also, it's where, well, they told me this, and then, well, they told me this, and the idea is to separate, to split.
Okay.
Yeah. So splitting can happen in couples therapy with an individual therapist too, where the couple is displaying something one way in the session, and then when they're in their individual therapy, they're saying, oh, well, our therapist told us X, Y, and Z, and I don't have to be accountable for that, and all that kind of stuff, and where there's a discrepancy between all the parties involved.
Okay.
Yeah. So our kiddos don't do that, but I think we have had to train them. For lack of a better term, we've had to educate them. That's a better term. That's a better term. We've had to educate them on how that we won't be split. You can't do that. And
I don't think they push the envelope. I don't feel they do.
They don't. They did when they were younger, but I mean that comes with maturity and also consistency. I mean, 100%. They tried it a couple times, but when they saw it didn't fly, they're very, very smart children. And if it didn't work the first couple times, they're not going to keep going at it. Like, they know it's not going to shift. So I think that's another way that we make sure that we stay connected while we're parenting. And then with the cell phone, that is less of a us strategy and more of a you type of sitch.
Yeah, the girls even mention it now. I just have to be more cognizant of it and put it up.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple. Just put it up.
But this is what stinks about your partner and wife being a therapist is, for me, I always go back to, there's a reason why you can't just put it up. There's a reason. You're avoiding something. You are uncomfortable about something. And so there's a reason. And I swear, until you know the reason, you ain't going to just put up the phone.
Okay. I'll have to give that some more thought as to the deep reason.
Well, I mean, I don't think you have to think too much about it.
You think it's something obvious?
I think it's boredom and discomfort.
Yeah, but then...
You're an instant gratification guy. It's how you were raised, babes.
I am.
Like, you, for better or for worse. So I grew up not in the United States for my primary years. And I'm also a millennial, so we did not have the tech that these kiddos have now. And so I spent hours on planes and trains and cars with nothing but a book and a crossword puzzle or like just something else, right? And I think it just taught me on how to entertain myself, how to be bored, and that boredom won't kill me and boredom's okay. But I don't feel like you had that same installment into your childhood. And then I feel like when you have had stressors and major things going on in your life, you utilize the phone to fall into, to be, to utilize as an avoidance technique. And now I feel like it holds its space for both of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting because, me being older than you, you would think we certainly didn't have tablets and things like of that sort when we would travel.
Yeah, but you didn't travel far.
No, we would travel an hour and a half to Disney World 4 times a year.
Yeah.
But that hour and a half car ride was just sitting there and just looking out the window.
I know, but
So you would think I'd be better apt to handle it than...
But there's just this restlessness.
There is. This undercurrent of restlessness.
There's this undercurrent of restlessness.
And I feel like there's a minute here. I could do something with this minute.
And I think that's where I'm like, hey, you've got a minute? Can you just talk to me? But for whatever reason, you don't.
Well, the kids are there. There's a barrier there.
But then but then you're avoiding engagement. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was interesting that your first thought and response, I'm definitely going to therapist mode now, is to be like, but the kids are there.
Right. Well, I can engage with them, but they're engaged in a conversation with you, and it's just...
But why do you have to have your phone to witness that? Why can't you just witness it? I didn't phrase that right. Like, why can't you just observe a conversation?
I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
So that's, I think, the root that you've really got to get down to, right? Is why, because I've noticed that. So I come from a very large family, very Texas-based family. We got a lot of events, a lot of people, a lot of conversation, a lot of desserts and iced tea and the good old Southern.
It's good. It's fun.
It's great. And it's often. And like we play games. We can play dominoes, chicken foot for hours, right? And I notice, like, for you, that feels so foreign to just be able to sit and just sit, like in a rocking chair, or just and watch just the activity. It's like you just can't. Mm-hmm. There's just a restlessness. And I think that restlessness, if we're going to pinpoint it to that, I think it's less of the phone. The phone is the result of this restlessness. And I would even say that the parenting, I think, becomes a scapegoat for you, where it's like, oh, well, I can't connect with you because the kids are talking. But I'm going to challenge that at the root of this is this restlessness, and that is our biggest disconnect. That is the biggest thing that affects our intimacy, is the restlessness.
So how would I get rid of the restlessness?
Well, that's a whole other, that's a therapy session.
All right, I'll talk to a therapist.
But I mean, I'm not going to get into that here. I mean, you and I can talk about how you get rid of that restlessness, but that's an undercurrent.
That's definitely an undercurrent.
That's an undercurrent.
That for sure is an
And
undercurrent.
I think that's where I have to put a boundary in, where I'm your wife and your partner. I'm not your therapist. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be your therapist. And from my perspective, I don't want to tell you why you have that restlessness, how you get rid of that restlessness. Because in this dynamic, I just need you to get rid of the restlessness so that we can really stay connected and our intimacy can maintain. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Complete sense.
Because to circle back to our last episode, like, I don't have to be emotionally connected for sex. I can be, I didn't phrase that correctly. Like, sex for me it doesn't always have to be lovemaking. Let me say it like that. Like, it can just be fun and adventurous and just pleasurable. It doesn't have to be concentration towards the creation of true intimacy and understanding within our marriage, right? Sometimes it is, and that's enjoyable, but that's not an all-encompassing thing for me. But, like, I do know that if I am agitated because you've been on your phone all day, or if I feel disconnected, like I have just seen you be restless and avoid me in certain contexts, like walk away from one too many conversations without calling ADHD and repairing, right? Like you've got 10 minutes, choosing that 10 minutes to scroll Craigslist, looking at cars you're never going to buy versus giving me that 10 minutes for conversation. That is a major turnoff for me. And it's really then hard to be physical.
Yeah.
And then it's really hard to meet your need of physicality because I'm like, I don't want to hold your hand right now. You had the opportunity to give me some attention and you chose Yahoo. And it is frustrating.
I could see how that's frustrating.
Oh, you can see how that's frustrating. Yeah. So I think that's your homework, is to figure out that restlessness, because if you really want the connection, if you want that, there's always consistency in our sex life, but if you want the really great kind of sex life, then you're in charge of making sure that you're not disconnecting us, right? Because with our dynamic, the disconnector is that restlessness, right? So, in kind of wrapping up, what would you kind of give to, I guess, advice that you would kind of give to folks regarding intimacy and connection and maintaining connection with your person, especially if you are someone who likes to avoid or is restless or anything like that?
So I'll look in the mirror when I say this, is put up the damn phone. I know that absolutely is our biggest disconnector is the phone. We said our children can be a disconnector or can be a barrier to that. But that's something that we love and we're not going to change. We can just put those boundaries in place that when we do need to have some connection when they're around, that we're communicating that with them. I think other points of advice, I think for us, it's really important to have dinner as a family, regardless of what's kind of going on. We make it a point to have that connection, not just as a couple, but as a family.
We're bad about date nights. We've got to get better. But
we were really great for a number of years about
really
consistent date nights. In fact, during COVID, we were still really.
We weren't going to restaurants, but we were making sure
we were
that
very
we had
creative about having date nights.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's fostering at the moment. That's kind of somewhat of a barrier with the date nights, but we need to get back on that cadence, because that's important for couples to have some consistency with date night.
It is, and I completely recognize that as a couples therapist, and I also want to acknowledge that
we were so good about it for such a long time. People would comment about how good we were about it, but life's gotten in the way, and we've got to get back on that train.
Yeah, we do. We do.
What other pieces of advice am I not thinking of? What else did we talk through?
I think those are...
I think it's important to know what your partner's connection points are.
Yeah.
You know, I know Allie's deep conversation.
About unsolvable things.
About unsolvable things. Maintain being present. You know, that's one that I struggle with, that underlying restlessness that I have to figure out as to why it exists.
Well, I think to circle back to another is, and again, we'll have a whole episode on this, but the personality acceptance. I think that also, you have to accept your partner for who they are, because if you don't, it will continue to be a disconnect for you. Because every time they do that one thing that you just can't get over, it will automatically disconnect you. You know what I mean?
Sure. The toilet paper under versus over.
Oh my God.
We're on the
don't
same
care
page with that.
But we are on the same
I've heard
page.
though towels, the way that towels are folded. I've heard that from some of my friends.
I am particular about towels, but
we share in the way we fold towels.
We share in the folding of the towels. You do socks very strangely. You do.
But I fold my own clothes.
But you fold your own clothes, so that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter because, and when I do your laundry,
I just have to.
Allie
did my clothes. All right, that's cool.
Exactly.
They're not the way I would do it, but I'm not going to complain about it.
Exactly, because I think that's what some couples will do. A partner will do a kind gesture, and they won't do it the exact way, and then they'll get on to him for it. And it's like, all right,
I just did
friend.
a kind gesture.
Yeah, it's like, they ain't going to do that for you ever again, right? Like, if you criticize the way they did something when they were, right? Yeah. So, but...
Table that for personality acceptance.
Yeah, a good one, yeah. Yeah, well, because you are... I am much more free-spirited than you, and you are much more particular about lots of things than I am. We are the yin and yang. And
it's interesting though, because I think in a lot of ways I'm more free-spirited.
In what ways? Give me a way.
I may have just bit my lip on this one.
That will be a great closure. Give me a way that you are more free-spirited than I.
I'll pull a U-turn to go to a restaurant that you say, "Oh, I want to try that place."
No, that's because when I pull, you will pull in because you're trying to appease me. That's not you being free-spirited. When we drive by a restaurant and I go, I've been meaning to try that, and you pull in, that is you being a loving, thoughtful, hey, now's the time. Now's the time to do this for my partner. That ain't you being free-spirited.
All right, I can be pretty damn uptight. I can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to not acknowledge that because that is an accurate statement. But
especially with our home and my cars.
Oh yeah, and we won't even. Yeah. We're digressing at this point, but yeah. So with all of that, so with connection and intimacy, we are wrapping up this conversation. And we are going to close out season 1 with next episode, which will be episode 10. And we are going to close out with the concept of jealousy. And some of that kind of goes into infidelity and things like that. But really the concept of jealousy, we'll kind of also touch on ethical non-monogamy, which is a population that I work with in my private practice. I'm one of the few who specialize and really work with that population of triad and couple dynamics within consensual or ethical non-monogamy. And so all of that are parts of
Are we
jealousy.
having another couple join us next week during our conversation?
About jealousy?
Episode 10.
I haven't, no one will talk about that topic. We will in season 2. We have a couple of folks lined up to talk about how you change over time and the biggest things that they have learned about themselves and partnership in long-term marriage. And we will have another couple joining us to talk about attachment styles. Which will be fantastic. But with some of these topics, it's surprising. People don't want to talk about it or they don't want to be vulnerable in that capacity. And I understand that. And obviously, we would never in 1,000 years bring on a client or of mine. And so really it comes down to our friends and who are willing to be vulnerable with us. So we are not going to be able to close out season 1 with a joint, but my hope is that we can kick off season 2 with another couple joining us, and then close out season 2 with another couple joining us, because next week we close out season 1 with jealousy. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you being a part of this conversation. Thank you for having these conversations with me and for being willing to go deep on what a lot of people would think would be silly conversations when I am needing to connect in an unconventional way, because I know I don't connect and see intimacy like everyone else seems to. I feel like an outlier in a lot of my life. So I appreciate you being on this journey with me.
I love you, and I wouldn't change you.
Well, I appreciate you that, because sometimes I would change me, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. But I love you. Thanks for being here. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Have a good one, y'all.
Thank you for tuning in to Married to a Shrink. We hope it brought you inspiration and valuable insights to enhance your journey towards meaningful connections. Remember, Love Lines is here to support you every step of the way. Whether you're an Austin single seeking expert dating coaching and personalized matchmaking, or a global listener looking to elevate your relationship through our self-paced courses, Love Lines LLC is committed to helping you build relationships that truly honor and serve you. To learn more and explore our services, visit us at lovelinesatx.com. Until next time, take care and continue nurturing the love you deserve. Bye, y'all.